Welcome back to another video by Ghostly Gloom. Before we begin, I kindly request you to subscribe to Ghostly Gloom and hit the bell icon to receive more videos from us. After watching the video, please take a moment to like it and comment on how you felt while watching. Now, let's dive into the story. I am a 25-year-old female. For the purpose of anonymity, I will refer to myself as Sabrina. I am from Romania. English is not my native language, but I shall try my best to make the story easy to be understood. My stories contain what you would call angels, spirits, demons, archangels, satanic people doing forbidden sessions of voodoo and everything, but for this particular story, I sort of believe this is not necessarily a bad encounter, or so I lie to myself, sometimes. There are many stories that I would love to share with you. You can either decide to share them, I don't mind, but mainly I just wish to talk with someone who has went through what I did and can understand and empathize with it based on your personal experiences. The one story that I can and will share with you for now, I need time to think if I'm ready to share the less fortunate experiences for now. I live in Romania. Our country has Orthodox religion, basically very similar to Christianity. We believe in God and Jesus Christ, with small certain similarities and differences. For example, IDK, if it's the same as Catholics do, we keep the deceased for a night. We call it the sleeping duty or guard night. We do not take their body out of its house she has lived in for their entire life in order to help the spirit find its way to heaven easier. The next 2 days, as we bury the bodies after 3 days, we take the body to the church where loved ones, but not relatives, to the deceased may come and pay respects to that person. After this process concluded, we bury the body at the cemetery where the priest will chant prayers helping the spirit of the deceased understand that she is no longer among the living, as Romanians are very spiritual people and believe in the afterlife, spirits and even in bad spirits that linger the world unable to move on. Understanding this is important as the story is pretty detailed itself. I had 5 grandparents, 3 grandmothers and 2 grandfathers. My first grandfather, we shall call him Michael, died when I was 6 years old due to a heart attack in August 2007. He raised me, and his death marked my life ever since because I couldn't grasp the significance of death. I would frequently dream about him, his messages, his signs. I would hear him in my dreams as he would guide me to be a good person, and so on. But even then, as a child, I knew what was a dream and what was reality. His wife, whom we shall call Anna, was my adoptive grandmother, as my real, by blood, grandmother, named Margaret, has died when my mom was 2 years old due to an abortion. I'm not sure if she was trying to abort my mother or a third child, since my mother has a brother and she was the second child. During the communist years, 1946 to 1989, Romania had a strict law regarding abortions, and women would abort the fetuses on their own, in the privacy of their homes by themselves, as no medics would agree to help with the procedure due to fear of being sentenced to life in prison. She died of septicemia, and my mother grew up without a mother until the age of 6 years old. Needless to say, I never met her or knew anything about Margaret, my blood grandmother. But this story is about my grandmother, adoptive one, named Anna. She was a very spiritual, wise, kind-hearted and intelligent woman. She never had children of her own. She adopted my mom and uncle. Their names aren't important for the story. My grandfather, Michael, was only dating my grandmother, but after my mother had met her on a family visit on her side in Iași, Moldova, it's a town in Romania, they got married soon after. My grandfather was a military general, and raising 2 children of 6 years and 13 years was hard. How they decided to get married? Well, it was thanks to my mother, because as soon as she first saw Grandma Anna, she went straight to her at the age of 6, raised her both arms up at her and asked, in a jolly child voice, "Hi, my name is Christina. Would you like to be my mommy?" My grandmother burst in tears, picked her up and immediately created a connection with my mother, whom she raised and loved as her own. It was not the same for my uncle, as he was 13 at that time and knew his own mother, Margaret, had died, and why. He denounced her and made her life much harder. After raising my mom and uncle, my uncle had 2 children of her own, a boy and a girl. She raised the girl, and when the boy was born she had a calcium crisis that made her faint and hit her head. She refused to raise my cousin afterwards as she was afraid she would drop holding the baby. My uncle never forgave her for that and hated her even more. When I was born, I was the light of their life as she loved my mother from moment one, and my grandfather Michael adored my mother. Because I am a replica of my mother, same eyes, same face, same body shape, they immediately took me in and raised me as my father worked in 3 different jobs and my mom was a pediatric nurse and worked in shifts. I loved growing up with her. Like I said, she was an extremely spiritual person. She loved to meditate, she would tell me about her dreams, she taught me how to decode them and what it meant. She told me about ghost encounters she had in her life and always told me not to fear any spirit that comes close to me in my life because ghosts see us as beams of light guiding them to God when they are confused. Yes, that was my grandmother Anna for you. She did this until I was 18 years old. We were very close, and I was living 5 minutes away from her, so I would visit her daily, sometimes still sleep at her place. Her hobby was to read the future in some cards she had owned, not tarot cards, but normal cards with some inscriptions she had, such as, encounter with mysterious man, beware, crying child, careful, dangerous woman. I can give you photos of the pack, it's just that the words are in Romanian, but I can translate them for you if you wish. Also, I would have to go to my parents' house since I have moved from there and the cards deck remained there. On the New Year morning of 2017, at 3:15 a.m., I called my grandma Anna to wish her a Happy New Year and to let her know how much I and my family loved her and appreciated her. I'd like to mention that Romanians rarely express their love by saying, "I love you," to our mothers, fathers, grandparents. We consider that you show your love by what you do in your life and how you respect them rather than just say the words. But that night, for the first time in 23 years, at that time, in 2017, I felt the need to tell her that. I still don't know why. Her voice changed, you could hear her chuckle in soft happy tears as she would hear that and said she loves us all back and forever will. Nothing seemed suspicious as I am a very sensitive and emotional woman myself, so the night went on normally. She was at a party, I was with my fiancé's house. The next day, the 1st of January 2017 at 17:30 p.m., I received a phone call from my father who told me that Grandma Anna had died the previous night. I couldn't express in words how my heart simply left my body, as if my own existence stopped, refusing to acknowledge that she was dead. I rushed home, the police was there, the ambulance was there. They say she died of a heart attack due to the climate change, same as my grandfather Michael did 11 years before her by the same cause. Outside it was cold, inside the house it was too hot, and as she was rushing to change her clothes, her heart couldn't handle the temperature change, her body couldn't balance the heat, and she died. But what I found particularly weird is the TOD, time of death. I still had her last phone call, 3:15 a.m. The policemen and ambulance staff analyzed her and declared her TOD was around midnight. They said there was no way I could have talked to her at 3:15 a.m. as for by that time the body would have already begun the rigor mortis stage. Who did I talk to? Because it was her phone number, it was her voice, and she seemed incredibly fine. Call it a sick joke or just medical staff TOD error, creepy. During her funeral, I decided to write her a goodbye letter as I am very spiritual, and even though no one will read it, I like to consider she took the message I had for her in heaven to pass it down to my other grandmother, Margaret, and 2 grandfathers, Michael and Peter. I wrote in that letter that I do love her a lot, that I thank her for every sacrifice she has done for me, and that I wish to tell Margaret, the real grandmother, which I have never met because she died from an abortion long before I was born, that I love her too, although I have never met her. I put that letter in my grandmother's coffin, kissed her forehead, and watched her go on her last road. My mom knows about the letter, she yet has asked me about what I wrote in it. After her funeral, I get a phone call from my grandmother, yes, my Nana Anna. At first I thought it was my father, as he would still use her phone to let all our relatives from other countries that she has died. So normally, I answer the phone, and I hear something unimaginable, impossible, formidable. I hear my Nana Anna. I hear her voice clearly. I hear her laughy voice, with intermittence and static occurring whenever she would pause. It was a soft, fading voice, but nothing scary, nothing fearful or intimidating. It made me feel like she was indeed there, but I will admit the whole situation did freak me out. She said to me, "Hello dear, I called to let you know I passed the message and I love you too." I couldn't reply, as the phone call hung up right after. It left me feel so vulnerable, as I thought maybe someone is playing a sick joke, but it couldn't be that. I saw my Nana be buried myself. I saw the coffin be sealed. I saw the letter exist inside the coffin until the very last second. No one took it out to read it. She had 3 sisters, but they were all dead and none of them had her voice. No one could have repeated her voice that perfectly. But the even scarier part comes after that first phone call. After another week, I remember it was during another day of Monday, right 1 week after the first phone call, my phone starts ringing again under the same number. I answer, already have forgotten about what has happened, and I hear an old lady, a voice I couldn't feel familiar. I did not know who that lady was. It was a pretty soft but strong voice. It felt like a relatively young woman, but an experienced. I would say around 30 to 40 years or so. I would like to mention that this time I was in the same room with my father, who owned her phone still, and I received the call. Her phone is in front of me on the table and not ringing. I open her phone as I speak on my phone. Her phone had no battery and it was dead closed, but I still get her phone call. I answer. I hear this weird lady, and she goes like this, "Hello sweetheart. You don't know me, but I do. I received your message and I love you too." Then the phone call hangs up again. Needless to say, I started screaming and panicking so hard that my dad immediately went to the telephone service to find out who is playing pranks on us. They went through her profile, numbers dialed and received. My number was not in her agenda of calls, so we decided to disable her number. Ever since then we do not receive calls anymore. But I do go to the cemetery more often and talk to them. This year is the first year from her death, so we are sort of celebrating her memory. But for me, personally, I do not celebrate her memory, as I feel she is constantly physically with me. I often have dreams of her. She would often visit me at nights. I'm saying dreams because I feel like I am going insane if I ever conclude on these situations being something other than dreams.